So just one more note, please fill up the empty seats if you can, move in from the outside of the row so people can have a chair. We have a very good crowd, and we want to make sure everybody gets a seat.
Good ones right up in front.
All right, we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to the New Hampshire Democratic Gubernatorial Forum. This is an opportunity to hear from the two Democratic candidates for governor. I'm Representative Skip Cleaver, also chairman of the Nashua Democratic City Committee, and we are the sponsor of this event. First, we want to thank the Nashua Public Library for hosting us, and specifically Carol Lyman and her crew and her staff for their work in making this possible. We'll be live streaming video on YouTube, and this will be available on channel 96, the Access channel. So welcome to our video viewers as well. We are honored to have with us this evening Steve Marchand, former mayor of Portsmouth, and Molly Kelly, former state senator from Keene, to discuss key issues in this campaign, to lay out their platform and positions, and take your questions. We've had a coin toss to determine who goes first, and Steve will be up first. We will begin this evening with opening remarks from both candidates, and our committee will be collecting your written questions during that opening. You'll see them with paper and clipboards. If you want to get a question in, just get their attention, give them your question, written question. And during that time, we will also introduce candidates for executive council as well as candidates for state senate districts 12 and 13. Then those questions will be posed to the candidates in sequence. Respondents will have 2 minutes to answer, then the other candidate will have 2 minutes to offer their response or rebuttal. We will rotate from candidate to candidate as long as time allows, then each will have an opportunity for closing remarks. Our committee will be timing each response and present 1 minute and 30-second warnings. That's a change, 2 minutes response as well as 2 minute opening. So we'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds, okay. Then a stop sign, of course, for the end of the conversation. We have another party involved in this election, of course. A party that deals in power, profits, and privatization. And their idea is to starve government and starve and eliminate services so that others can profit. This is totally unacceptable. We have right here in New Hampshire a carbon copy of the situation that is going national. Chris Sununu has done great harm to our state in his first term, and we must make sure that it is his only term. He signed into law restrictions He has signed into law restrictions on voting rights, has limited the possibility of expanded green energy, set forth a budget that provides $100 million. That's $100 million in big business tax cuts, which were not even requested, and most of that's going out of state. Your property tax has not changed, but $100 million goes a long way. In a cynical ploy, he signed into law statewide Medicaid expansion and tried to take credit for it, when in fact, the vast majority of his party voted against it. And he did not lead, he followed. It was Democrats who moved this legislation. Fortunately, now we have Medicaid expansion going forward. We could go on and on about damage this governor has done and can do. He goes by the same Republican playbook we see operating nationwide, the Koch brothers and the Trump playbook, which is so damaging to our state and to our country. We have 99 days, folks. 99 days until the general election, 43 days until the primary, and we have work to do. Right now, with pleasure, I would like to introduce one of America's great mayors, the mayor of Nashua, Mr. Jim Donchess. also have in the House Senator Betty Lasky. And if we could we have all these state reps stand and be recognized? State reps. And secondly, those who are running for state rep, please stand and be recognized. And thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Steve Marchand for remarks.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. This is a great crowd. I love being in Nashua. For all the feelings I've had the last few years, and I suspect you've had them too, there's one feeling I know I've never had: resignation. Donald Trump and Chris Sununu want us to feel resigned, that this is what the new normal is going to look like. They want us to be discouraged and to focus on compromise over little things, while they are consolidating power over enormous things, generationally enormous things. They are counting on us as Democrats to be weak. But if there's one lesson I've learned over the last few years, over 260 events, thousands of conversations, it is this: in the age of Trump, voters seek leaders who are thoughtful, who are strong, and then will let it rip, and forcefully make the case that we are the party not of the past, we are the party of the future. I am running for governor because we are at a moment that comes once in a generation, a moment with noise all around us, because there is chaos all around us, and people seek clarity and strength in their leaders. A moment where the party of the future will not just win in 2018, but will get to define for the next 20 years what it's going to mean to be a Democrat, a New Hampshireite, and in our own small way, even an American. This is what voters are searching for: the vision to know where to go, the competence to know how to get there, and the courage to say it out loud. If we do that with the energy of youth and the optimism that can only come from an immigrant son, a willingness to lead from the front, our future will be based not on the worst of what we have been, but on the best of what we can be. We are the party, and I believe I am the candidate, ready to define our future shared success and then lead us there. So our job is to define the future before somebody else does. So what does that defined future look like? Our future delivers the best public education in America, and not by voucherizing taxpayer dollars. It involves no longer being one of 6 states that do not fund pre-K at the state level. We have the highest in-state tuition in America. I've got a specific plan uniquely to fund pre-K and to provide debt-free college for in-state students. Our future also involves changing the way the candidates that get elected pay for their elections. We'll talk, I'm sure, more about it tonight, but that definitely includes, and I say this alone, the public funding of elections. It is the only way that we are going to change a system that is fundamentally broken. Our future on guns. Some politicians like Chris Sununu, they want to arm the teachers. But we have to do more than say common sense gun reform. Neither will get the job done. We got to deal with suicide and homicide, the threat of domestic violence, the threat of mass shooting. I've got a 7-point plan, and I have literally had folks with AR-15s who have come to my events, including in this room, in this building rather, to tell me how they feel about my 7-point plan. But it turns out when you communicate strength and clarity, you get them on many of the points, and you get to move the debate. For most of my life, we have played defense on guns, but when we talk about a 48-hour wait period and a full background check, and we talk about red flag laws and so many other things, when we play offense, we win. The defense of the past, now we lead to the offense. The future of how we spend and raise money as a state, how we modernize government. I'll tell you what it does not include. It does not include the pledge. The pledge is a remnant of the past. It has framed our politics and our policy for my entire life. During that time, it has morphed from opposition to certain kinds of taxes to opposition to virtually all kinds of taxes and fees. We wonder why our mental health system has deteriorated. We wonder why recovery centers struggle to survive. We wonder why we have the highest in-state tuition in America. Well, I know this. Mel Thompson is no longer the governor of New Hampshire. Bill Loeb no longer runs the union leader. And the union leader no longer runs the state of New Hampshire. The pledge is the party of the past. We're going to be the party of the future. Our future leads with specificity and aspiration on clean energy. We argue with Chris Sununu on his veto of bills which would lift the net metering cap and empower biomass. He was wrong to veto those two bills, and I would sign them. But our next governor must go much bigger on energy policy. Earlier today in Manchester, I released a historic plan to move us toward the front of clean energy policy in America. Currently, about 18% of our electricity comes from renewable energy sources. I will pursue a plan as governor to increase our renewable portfolio standard to 50% by the year 2030. This will dramatically increase the demand for renewables, unleash the creation of thousands of quality jobs over the next 12 years. We should do better than raise the net metering cap. We should do what some of our neighbors are doing. We should eliminate the net metering cap altogether. Upgrade our electric grid. Embrace and authorize the federal government to study offshore wind in New Hampshire, and use our full RGGI funds to dramatically increase the capacity of our energy efficiency programs for homes and businesses. For too long, leaders in both parties have felt constrained in how high we as a state can lift our gaze on the issue of energy policy. But we have now seen other states, including our neighbors, lead on policy that creates jobs, lowers electric bills, and makes us safer and cleaner. We do not need big projects like Granite Bridge or Northern Pass. We need a progressive plan like I've laid out, and then we need to lead. Our future defines immigration. As a son of immigrants, it is not enough for us to bemoan the hate, the hateful words, and now the hateful deeds of the current administration. Chris Sununu has had the chance to lead on this issue. He has been silent, and thus he is complicit in his silence. Embracing our immigrant neighbors makes us safer and stronger and more prosperous, and it will put us on the right side of history. We will be judged by what we did at this time on this issue, and I want the state I love so much to be judged as righteous. I have released a 4-point plan that will make New Hampshire a sanctuary state. If we do not lead, nobody else will, and on this issue I will lead. And our future refuses to accept the premise of the religious right relating to a woman's right to terminate a pregnancy. With the nomination of Judge Kavanaugh, we must acknowledge the probability that Roe may well be overturned. That is why within days of the announcement, I was the first and remain the only gubernatorial candidate with a specific plan of action that we must implement at the state level to protect and expand a woman's right to safely, legally, and accessibly terminate a pregnancy. It means codifying it into state law. It means eliminating the 3 existing laws that are punitive in nature and make it more difficult to get a safe termination. And we should be the 18th state in America to eliminate the Hyde Amendment. Right now, a woman can only use public dollars in the case of rape, incest, or life endangerment of the mother. This means if you have money, you have choice. If you don't have money, you don't have choice. I am the only candidate that is saying this is wrong and will lead on it. Some people think taking this position requires courage, but I am here to tell you that on this issue, like so many others, it does not require courage. It requires an understanding that a new, durable, exciting majority of New Hampshireites agree with these positions. They are simply looking for a leader and a party that is willing to unflinchingly say it out loud. The party of the future embraces commuter rail through Nashua and Manchester, paid family and medical leave, universal health care, a full repeal of the death penalty, and a commitment to fully fund our mental health and addiction recovery services. For much of my lifetime in New Hampshire, the belief has been the way for Democrats to win is to come halfway, blur the differences. But that is not the way to win or to lead in this new era. In the age of Trump, in this time of chaos, the way to build the future I am laying out will not come by persuading Donald Trump or Chris Sununu. It will only come by replacing Donald Trump and Chris Sununu. This is not a time to compromise with ourselves. We must make the argument with force, and then we must win the argument. And the good news is, the candidate with the message, energy, and courage to excite our Democratic base that is expanding is the same candidate who will project the strength, competence, and clarity of purpose most New Hampshireites so hunger for in the next generation of leadership. That candidate is me. That party is us. And the time is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. At this time, it's my honor to introduce Senator Molly Kelly of Keene.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you all hear me okay? All right. Thank you so very much, Skip. Thank you. The Nashua City Dems. You're the best. Look at this crowd. You're great. Thank you so much for being here. Yes, so I am Molly Kelly, and I am running for governor because I believe that the direction of this state is going in the wrong direction, and I'm deeply, deeply concerned under this direction of our Governor, Chris Sununu. It is wrong for New Hampshire, and I am here to change that. Thank you. You know, Chris Sununu, when he is here, he has, as you can see, for public policy, everything that he is implementing is very parallel to what is going on in the Trump administration, and we can't have that. We can see that his real concerns and what he cares about is special interest and corporate donations and contributions to his campaign. But he's not concerned or interested in our children and our families here in New Hampshire, and that's what is important about New Hampshire. You know, as I have been around and talked with so many people, whether in the Senate or during the campaign, what I see people who stand up and say, what we want is we want a New Hampshire that works for everyone, where everybody has the opportunity to succeed and not just a few. You know, that's something that I learned a long time ago, when I grew up. I'm number 2 of 11 children. And if you picture us around a dinner table of 13 people every night, you knew and you learned early on that if one person was to succeed, we all had to succeed. And I have carried that value with me throughout my entire life. And so what I want for New Hampshire is I want a New Hampshire where if one person is to thrive, we all must thrive. We are in this together. It is about all of us. I also have heard, and I believe that New Hampshire is a place where everyone wants an opportunity to have an education, to have job training and skills training, so that they can move forward in their lives and take care of their families and take care of each other and their communities. You know, education is personal to me. Today, I have a wonderful husband who's here with me tonight. We have 4 children now and 7 grandchildren. But there was a time in my life when that wasn't true. I was a single mom. And I had 3 little children. They were just 3, 6, and 7. And I knew that I had to go back to college and to finish my education if I was going to be able to take care of my family the way that I wanted to do. I was willing to work hard like everybody in New Hampshire. We are all willing to work hard if we know we can get somewhere. And that's what government can do. I worked hard. I managed the apartments on the complex campus of Keene State College, where I lived with others like myself. I cleaned those laundry rooms. I waitressed one night a week at Papa Gino's, and I even had a rural paper route in Peterborough, New Hampshire. Because I knew and I believed that that was how I could move forward. I went on, and with my family, my children, I completed a law degree. And I want everyone in New Hampshire to have an opportunity, no matter where you start and no matter where you come from, that you have the opportunity to go as far as you can in your life, and you provide opportunities for your children. Because what else is important to us? What else? Why are we all here? Why do we do what we're doing? Because we want them to have an opportunity, and we want all of us to have an opportunity to take care of our families and move forward. That's why I was so devastated when I saw that Chris Sununu is supporting a school voucher program. And do you know what he said? He said if reelected, it will become his signature piece of legislation. And we know that. Why do we know that? Because Betsy DeVos has stood here with him and said so as well. That voucher program weakens public education, and it will raise your property taxes, all of us. I want to run for governor because I want to strengthen public education. I believe that public education is the core of democracy. And you know, if we erode public education, we will be eroding democracy, and it's unacceptable, and I would veto that bill. You know, the governor also has given $100 million in tax breaks to 3% of the wealthiest corporations. We need to take that funding, and we need to strengthen and fund public education, job training, and invest it in our college students for affordable college as well. We know that. Our businesses, what are they saying every day? We need a prepared and educated workforce. That's what we want. They're not saying to us we need tax breaks. They're not telling us that. And our young people, what are our young people telling us? I don't think there are any opportunities in New Hampshire. I think we'll leave. That's not going to work. We want them here. We need them here. It's most important. So we need to create, and I will as governor, friendly public policy for young people, to attract them to our state and to keep them here. Such things as affordable college. Expand our college debt repayment plan. We need to have paid family medical leave in this state. We need to expand broadband across our state. And finally, we need to bring rail to New Hampshire. You know, what's really important to families, all of us, young families, all of us who have families, is we want a New Hampshire that has clean air and clean water, right? So we need to wean ourselves off of fossil fuel. And we need to move forward all the way for renewable energy. You know, the group net metering bill that the governor just vetoed, we know what that did, and I'll give you a couple examples. But let me start first. When I was in the Senate in 2013, I got passed, and it was signed into law, the first group net metering bill and law that has propelled solar and hydro to the state. We can talk about it, or we can do it, and I've done it. The governor vetoed the expansion of group net metering. I was here in Nashua not long ago, Senator Lasky, and we were at the hydro plant, the Mines Fall hydro plant. That plant is part of Nashua, the city of Nashua. And they were really relying on that bill to be passed to be able to expand the megawatts so that they could provide energy to the town buildings here in the city and the school. Chris Sununu vetoed that. And what did he do? Energy costs would have been lower, and your property taxes would have been lower. So by vetoing that bill, he has raised your property taxes. Also, not long after that, about a week later, we find out Eversource increased their rates by 20%. By 20%, 1 minute, by 20%. And then Chris Sununu, we find, had received contributions from Eversource in the amount of $50,000. Unacceptable. Where is his interest? Not with our children and our families and our communities. I will just end with, I have 1 minute. I am going to be very clear with all of you. I have been a champion for women's rights and reproductive rights my entire life. And I, as governor, I will not allow reproductive rights to go backwards in this state. And as your governor, I promise you that all women, no matter, regardless of your income, will have access to a safe, legal abortion, period. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we have with us the District 5 Executive Council candidate, Democratic candidate, Ms. Deb Pignatelli, who was there before and then will be there again. Deb.
Good evening, everyone. As Skip said, my name is Debora Pignatelli, and I'm running to return to the Executive Council. Thank you. I was your executive counselor from 2004 to 2010 and 2012 to 2014. I was the only Democrat to win that seat since 1964. It's a very difficult district. But I hope you'll support my campaign, and here's how you can do that. Take some of my brochures. I have a whole bunch tonight. Give them to your friends and your family. Talk to me. These compare my opponent and me. I have beaten my opponent 3 times and hope to beat him a 4th time this November. Take a bumper sticker if you think you can use it on your car. Be willing to send out postcards toward the end of October, and help me win back this seat for the Democrats. We really have an embarrassment of riches, don't we, in this city and in the state. We have great candidates running for governor, for Senate, for House, for the Executive Council. And I appreciate any help that you can give me. Let's go on with the debate.
And we're honored to have with us a candidate for District 12 Senate seat, which includes the wards 1, 2, and 5 in Nashua, Melanie Levesque.
Good evening, everyone. What an awesome crowd we have tonight. This is great. Good people. Well, as you heard, my name is Melanie Levesque. I'm a mother, a wife, I'm a small business owner, I'm a volunteer in my community, and I was a 3-term state representative for Hollis, Brookline, and Mason. I believe in making a difference through service. I believe in providing value to those that I serve, and I believe in a government that puts its people first. You can clap for that. I'm gonna. Yeah. As a state representative, we did many good things for the people of New Hampshire. We strengthened education, we expanded health care, we took care of our environment and had a responsible energy policy. And we looked out for people's civil rights, passing civil unions and marriage equality. Today, we are seeing our representatives, not our good representatives here tonight, standing up for school vouchers, which will weaken our public schools. not supporting Medicaid expansion, which hurts families, it hurts the people that are affected by the opioid crisis, and now vendors who provide mental health care, any health care, who receive Medicaid dollars are not being compensated. We can do better, and we will do better. I will ask that you support me with your voice, with your vote, with your donations, and here's my card. Please, this is our year when good people with common values and common goals work together. We can do anything, and we can do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. The other District 12 candidate is Tom Falter of Greenville. And Tom was unable to make it due to a prior commitment, so his son Stephen is here to speak in his behalf. Stephen Falter.
Good evening. My name is Steve Falter, and my father is running for state senate in the 12th district. I'm speaking on his behalf tonight. Obviously, he can't be here. He's on the other side of the country right now, and he asked me to step in for him, and I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. So bear with me. I do see my neighbor, so that's nice. So bear with me. I'm not a public speaker, but I'm going to do my best. But my dad does, he sends his regards and he apologizes for not being able to attend. I really don't have a lot to talk about his campaign, but I can talk about him. You know, it's hard in 2 minutes to talk about the most important person in your life, but I'm going to do my best. So, principles and values that he instilled within me are directly responsible for the person I am today. My dad loves his family, his country, in the state of New Hampshire, and the people within. My dad's certainly the hardest working person I know. He never stops. As long as I can remember, I remember him working, but he's always had time to make time, always was able to make time for me. Growing up, we always had construction projects. He always taught me how to, the right way to do things. And he taught me a trade when I was young to help me put myself through college. My dad works in construction, and he teaches trade skills to young apprentices. He's worked with his hands and with people all of his life, and he's always told me, you don't cut corners when you're in construction because that's how people get hurt. My dad cares about people, especially people that have not had the opportunities that he's had and he was able to afford me. I'm the result of my father never taking a shortcut with his family. Unfortunately, too many of our friends and neighbors aren't getting the opportunities that they once came to expect and deserve. That's why my father wants to serve the people of the 12th district. He wants to make sure that your voices and concerns are heard, that you have a voice in the room, and he wants to serve the people of the 12th district and fight for results. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Cindy Rosenwald is running for the Senate in District 13, which includes all of the wards other than 1, 2, and 5 in Nashua. Cindy is at a legislative conference representing us tonight, so we have standing in for her Representative Trish Klee.
Hi. As Chip said, I'm sorry, Skip said, Cindy can't be here today, so I'm going to read a statement from her. I'm sorry that I cannot be here with you this evening. I'm at a national conference of state legislators, getting updates on issues that affect the relationship between the state and the federal government. Tonight is important in Nashua because we all play an important role this fall in determining the direction of our state through the election of our next chief executive. And the next governor is with you here tonight at this crucial point in the future of our state. Friends, we have a serious issue to face, and we have to make sure all voices are heard. Just earlier this month, Chris Sununu signed a shameful piece of legislation to restrict college students from voting in New Hampshire. This is a blatant attempt to disenfranchise the very people who are the future of our state. Democrats know how important it is for every voice to be heard, and we need to elect a Democrat majority in November so we can repeal Sununu's voter suppression law. Our next governor needs to focus on the opioid crisis and support Medicaid expansion as the single best tool to increase our capacity for drug treatment and recovery services. And our next governor needs to support the policies and investments we need to attract and retain a younger workforce and new businesses with good-paying jobs. That means affordable, high-quality childcare, great public schools, college tuition that's within reach, paid family leave insurance, and commuter rail. We need a governor who supports New Hampshire's workers, who doesn't attack the unions that are trying to secure and protect workers' rights. We need a governor who supports a higher minimum wage so that no one working full-time has to rely on government assistance just to get by. It is so crucial for us to elect Democrats from the bottom of the ticket up to the governor's office. As the next state senator in Nashua, District 13, I will work with the next governor to help enact these goals to lead New Hampshire into the future we want and need for the next generation. I humbly ask for your support and your vote. Thank you so much, Representative Cindy Rosenwald.
Thank you to all those candidates. We're very excited about 2018. It is critical, absolutely essential that you get all your friends and neighbors out to vote and get this election over so that we can get on with the business of Nashua, of New Hampshire, and of the United States of America. And thank you to those who submitted questions, very much appreciated. What is your position on passenger rail for the Merrimack Valley?
Appreciate the question. I am for it, and there are many reasons for it. It turns out that we have to do more than just keep the shrinking number of young people that we have in the state here. We got ourselves a denominator problem, I call it. We don't have enough of them here, so I need to bring people that don't live here, that are relatively young, and get them to New Hampshire. And the most cost-effective way to do it involves commuter rail. We got this amazing, juicy economy. It's a juicy orange. It's called the Greater Boston Economy. And Chris Sununu, and frankly his dad, who was my governor when I was a little kid in Manchester, he learned from his dad to denigrate our proximity to the 128 belt, as somehow we had to choose that. Our geography was a choice. Being near Boston is an enormous asset if we take advantage of it. And we should use commuter rail as the straw to stick it into the juicy orange that is the Greater Boston economy. It's a no-brainer, and I need those people to move to New Hampshire. The second element, though, that I think is a little less sexy, but is in some ways just as important, arguably the single biggest infrastructure asset we have as a state is the airport in Manchester. And if you look at it over the last several years, we have been losing gates, losing business, losing hundreds of millions of dollars of value to TF Green Airport in Providence, which is seen as the competition for the secondary airport near the Boston Logan Airport. And when I ask people why that is the case, the number one reason is because of the lack of accessibility related to the lack of rail, unlike what they have at a better level outside of Providence. So this can add hundreds of millions of dollars of value to our number one capital asset. And if we're going to get people that don't live here now, especially under the age of about 45, to come to New Hampshire, to live, to work, to play, to start a business, to educate their kids, I need that commuter rail to get them up here for good.
Molly Kelly, your response.
Yes, I just want to make clear, I do support the passenger rail. Let me just tell you, when I was a state senator and served on the Senate Transportation Committee, I had a number of times that I could vote in support of bringing passenger rail to New Hampshire. Specifically, what we are still hung up on in government here in New Hampshire is just to allow the federal government to do a study. And we were unable, and I know how hard Senator Lasky worked on this, so hard, and thank you for that. And we need to be able to push that study through so that our Commissioner of Transportation can just do a plan. Then we can look at the cost and the data and move forward with rail. But that's what has to happen first. And I am proud of the fact that I have been supporting this for many, many years. It is necessary for the state to grow our economy. It is necessary for young people to know that we are invested in them and we want them here. And I will continue to support and as governor push through that federal study because that's where it begins. I think the real concern here, and most of you are probably aware, if this state doesn't do anything, it will end up being pushed to privatized. And I believe that is not the way to go. It is the state's responsibility, and I will urge the legislature to pass the legislation, move forward on the federal, get the state moving ahead, and we will bring rail to New Hampshire.
Thank you. The next question goes to Senator Kelly. When will New Hampshire provide a full-service VA hospital?
How necessary is that, right? As soon as we can, it is so necessary. And, you know, we have to work with the federal delegation to be able to make that happen. And I am proud to have received the endorsement of U.S. Senator Jean Shaheen, U.S. Senator Maggie Hassan, Congresswoman Annie Kuster, so that I can continue to work with them as governor to make sure that we do serve the veterans. We owe them that. They have issues and medical health issues that they have a right in our state to be taken care of, and we need to stand up and to support them. I will do that, and I will work with our federal delegation to make sure it happens here in the state. Thank you.
Your response.
Number one, I agree with, we need a positive relationship with our federal delegation, and I can assure you that after the primary, I will continue to have a wonderful relationship with the governor. I don't know how many times I've heard over the last several years, you know, the governor's position in New Hampshire is a relatively weak governor's position because of a 2-year term, executive council. It's almost like they're trying to convince us to not run anymore or something, but it turns out that you have an enormous asset if we're willing to use it, the bully pulpit. And in a state with a high percentage of veterans, in a way that we need to communicate, Republicans for most of my lifetime have tried to own the military and the veterans cloak, that they're the party that's stronger, that cares about their veterans more, until we get to the issue of public policy. And then when it actually comes to investing resources to have the back of the people that had our back, that's where the tough talk often falls short with our Republican counterparts. I think this is an opportunity not just to do the right thing, it's also an opportunity to lead on the rhetoric and to lead for a generation about the Democratic Party respecting at the utmost level what our veterans do once they return home. And frankly, as somebody who used to work for AARP for a while, veterans actually are an interesting part of our workforce. At the same time that we are trying to increase the number of folks on the younger end of the age scale, we also have folks that are returning, veterans, variety of ages, that have an awful lot to offer, maybe in different roles in terms of hours and that sort of thing, health needs. But there's an opportunity to expand our workforce while we're trying to increase the number of young people. This is how we can communicate to our veterans about their continued importance here in the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you very much. Next question is for Mayor Steve Marchand. How do you intend to address the issue of downshifting costs to cities and towns?
For everything you care about, the reality is that there's 2 big things that we got to get right in order to optimize how we fix the things you care most about. I alluded to both earlier. One, which hopefully will come in another question tonight, is the way that we fund the campaigns of the people that end up making the decisions about that $6 billion a year budget. That's what campaign finance reform, including the public funding of elections, is all about. But then there's the money itself. No state, I've been an auditor of city, county, and state governments off and on for 20 years. I'm a public administrator by training. I have seen the best and worst run cities, counties, and states in America. And when I tell them I'm from New Hampshire, my fellow auditors, They say, that's funny. When we want to know what American governance structure looked like in the 19th century, we come to New Hampshire today. That's in part because we rely more on property taxes than any state in America, and frankly, think about ways to deliver maximum value at a price that is sustainable. We are going to get sued again in the next year or two in all likelihood because the discrepancy between the have and have not communities on education funding is worse now than it was before the first Claremont lawsuit. We can wait until the inevitable likely occurs, or we can get on it, which is one reason I'm not taking the pledge, because we need to change the culture. This took a lot more than 2 years to get to this point. It's going to take a lot longer than 2 years to get out of it, but until we begin moving the conversation and changing the culture, we will end up with these incredible discrepancies between the Claremonts and the Bedfords. We know it is there. We have a responsibility to do something about it, or downshifting will be the inevitable conclusion of our structure.
Molly Kelly, your response.
Yes, thank you, Skip. Yes, this is a very important issue. I know that because of the downshifting, the property taxes have gone up, and we need to put a stop to that. When I was in the Senate during the time we had a recession, and many things changed during that recession, but there was a promise made. There was a promise made, but when there were funds available, that we would then bring back that 35% that we had promised to our cities and towns. Now we have choices to make. We have a governor today that is giving tax breaks. Those tax breaks are not necessary, but we do need to bring back to the towns and the cities what we promised and not continue the downshifting. That was a promise, and people have relied on that. So we have choices, as I said. If you have revenue and you're giving that away, $100 million, 3% of the largest corporations, what else could we be doing with that? And this is one of those. The other is that those who have worked so hard in their lives rely on those pensions, and they have a right and they deserve to continue to receive those pensions. And government must make sure that that money is there. We have choices to be made. I think you can hear what choices I would make, and it would lower your property taxes, and people then could feel safe about the pensions that they were promised. Thank you.
A related question. New Hampshire is starved for revenue. How can you address the revenue needs of the state for infrastructure, education, et cetera?
Is this a question for me, Skip?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, I think you've been hearing throughout the evening what my plan is, and it is about choice, about what we do with revenue, and we can offer tax breaks, or we can fund public education, job training, and make college affordable. As I said earlier, businesses, that's what they're craving. That's what they want. They want a prepared and educated workforce. We need our young people to stay here. How do we entice them and attract them to stay here? But to offer those benefits like affordable college, repayment plans, debt plans, and for their college loans. And also, we know that if we give businesses what they need, they will be successful, they provide profits, and that comes back into our general fund, and we continue to invest. It is the wisest investment with the greatest return, and that's what we need to do. I will tell you clearly, there is no one in this race for governor who supports a sales or income tax, and that has been clear throughout this campaign and previous campaigns. Thank you.
Your response, Steve.
So we need more revenue. 3 places to start. These are the easy ones, frankly. The first one is we need to reverse the business profits tax cut, which is about $100 million a year. It was passed by the Senate several years ago under both parties. I was the director of corporate relations for several years at UNH, and I would ask them what they wanted and didn't want. I'll tell you what they never said. They never said, please cut the business profits tax. They never said, please avoid a legitimate minimum wage. They never said, please give me a right to work. They never said any of these things. They said, I need people. because we got the lowest birth rate in America and the second highest median age in America. We've lost a greater percentage of our high school population than any state in America the last 10 years. We've lost a quarter of our K through 12 population in just 15 years. The business community knows it better than the politicians do, and it freaks them out, and it should. So I said, what draws in people and keeps them here? What solves your problem? And they said America's best pre-K through 12 public education. They said invest in infrastructure in meaningful ways because we communicate to the private sector through investment, long-term investment from the public sector. Smart public investment breeds private investment. I have seen that throughout my entire public administration career. We need to deal with addiction in a long-term healthcare-based way instead of a short-term law enforcement-based way, and then we need to build a culture of entrepreneurship that is surprisingly progressive and inclusive. So reverse the business profits tax cut. We need to increase the gas tax. I'm proposing 4 cents a gallon. That would generate about $30 million a year. We've got 352 red list bridges that are set to go on the list in the next 10 years with scarce funding to do something about it. When you got 6 bridges in town and 4 of them are just fine, that is not an acceptable answer. And then I am a longtime proponent of legalizing, regulating, and taxing cannabis for adult use. My plan would generate about $35 million a year, state and fairer at the local level.
Thank you. This question is for Steve Marchand. What can you do to increase bipartisanship efforts in New Hampshire government?
I'm not David Copperfield, you know. I kid,
now
I
that
kid.
we've been bashing the other party.
Well, but here's the thing. I would love to tell you that the way to get progressive ends would be through compromising means. Listen, I was married to somebody who used to be a Republican. She left the party because they went wild on her. I have lots of friends across party lines. It is not personal. But the reality is that unless you have said, hey, I'm for paid family medical leave, and then we gave him a very approachable bill that he then said, whoa, that's a backdoor income tax waiting to happen. This is American politics in 2018. And so just like was the case a generation ago after Watergate, and I believe this strongly, and I wish it wasn't true, but I believe in my heart it is, we are not going to get where we want to go by persuading Republicans and moderate voters and swing voters. Just come on over here, I'll be Republican light, I'll wear an orange vest so you think I hunt, whatever it is, okay? The way we're going to do it is we got to make the argument. We got to do it forcefully, we got to do it thoughtfully, we got to have vision, we got to have competence, we got to have courage. And if we do that, we get to replace them. And we will not do it by simply bringing people over by wincing, because when you sound apologetic, it implies you have something to apologize for. We have nothing to apologize for. We will build a durable, lasting coalition that includes people that voted for Bernie and then Trump, voted for Bernie then stayed home, voted for Clinton, people that voted for Romney and then Clinton. They share progressive values. They want to know we're good at math, and we are. We will show them, and that is the durable coalition that will let us govern for the next 20 years.
Molly Kelly, your response.
So we have a problem, don't we? We're not listening to each other. We're not hearing each other. And we need to be able to do that. You know, there are ways to get things done together. And that's possible. We do pass legislation. It takes leadership to be able to do that. It takes relationships to be able to do that. And that's the legislative process. And the governor leads the way. I can do that. I've been there and I've done it. I think the other thing we have to remember is sometimes we can't agree, and we're not going to agree. And we have to own that. And that's when, as Michelle Obama said, we take the high road, they take the low road. And we need to continue to do that. You know, there's one of the things we forget to talk about, I think sometimes in politics, which is really important to me. And that's about treating people with dignity and respect. That's the core of who we are. And we can't forget that. The hardest times when I wanted to pass a piece of legislation and other people disagreed with me, and it was frustrating, I often had to stand back and say to myself, this is not about you. This is about the people I serve. And how am I going to get this piece of legislation passed, because that's what's good for the people of the state. And we can do that. And I have done that. And you do it by relationships, listening, and persevere. You persevere with what you believe, because your values are important and they don't change. So I just want to end that with saying the Democrats are a party of caring people, and don't forget it, and be proud of it, and stand up for it, and trust yourself and your values, because we know what is good for each other, and we will continue to do that as Democrats. Thank you.
Change of pace. This question is for Senator Molly Kelly. Do you favor building a wall along the Canadian border? That's a joke.
No.
That's just.
They are our
to get
friends.
everybody's attention and lighten things up just a
Do
bit.
we get up and move around?
Yes. All
2
right.
minutes. That's pretty good.
Was that your real question, Skip?
No,
Okay.
we don't want any walls around the corner office either,
Thank
virtual or otherwise. The real question for Ms. Molly Kelly: how do you plan to make college affordable for middle and lower income students?
Well, I think there are a few things that we can do. Is that we can freeze tuition, right? And we're talking about college and the community college. I hope that we're talking about both, because I think that is what it involves. And I think that we need to make sure that our state has college affordable as a priority. One of the things that you get to do when you're the governor is you start the budget process, right? And you get to put at the top of the list what's important to you. And what's important to me is education and an investment in education. It will be at the top of my list. And we have to make that happen. There are so many initiatives going on today to try to make college affordable. As I said, businesses are looking for all of these students. We need to bring them together. I chaired the Governor's Advanced Manufacturing Education Advisory Council for 8 years in the Senate. It's a great model to work together so that we can lower cost and make sure that everyone has the opportunity to go to college. We had CEOs from manufacturing around the table with educators, and they were in separate silos, and we had conversations together. And for the first time, I saw corporations saying to educators, what can we do for you, instead of just the opposite. So this is a crossroads for us in this state, and we need to work together and collaborate to do that, because college is it has to be affordable. I have to tell you that people have, I saw the other day, I know in the paper, and you probably did, and talked with Keene State College, that they are bringing the community college on their campus, so that students can go 2 years to the community college on a campus, afford that, then move forward with college and get a degree. Those are the kinds of new ideas that we can do if we say, and I have always said, education is the priority.
So as I mentioned earlier, I used to be the Director of Corporate Relations for the University of New Hampshire. And unlike Chris Sununu, I actually did talk to 100 businesses. That's a whole nother answer right there. Man, did I learn a lot. And one of the things, as I said earlier, is what the priority was. It is not what Chris Sununu and most Republicans' talking points have been about what they allege will grow the economy. It is people. And so, as a student who was a first-generation college student, neither of my folks graduated high school. French was the first language of our home. I mentioned we're an immigrant family. And we experienced deep financial trouble due to a healthcare crisis. It's one reason why I will go to the mat for anything that gets us towards universal health care, because I don't think the amount of money you have should have anything to do with your access to insurance. But it put us in a deep hole. And the good news was I got a thick envelope from the University of New Hampshire. I was told that was a good thing. And then I opened it, and they said, congrats, you're in. It's $13,000. Now, that sounds great today, but it was still the highest in-state tuition in America in the early 90s, the time of this story. My problem was not going to be solved by freezing tuition. My problem was $12,000 ago. And so especially for first-generation college students who are right at the precipice of success or not being able to get there, I've developed a plan that's on the website that can provide debt-free college because the private sector is paying so much money to recruit talent from out of state, they would much rather be investing in the kids on their way up the ladder so that they will gladly pay for half or more of their education. I have a plan, a pilot program in year one that would be about $4 million of additional, it's not carve out, it's add on, for selected majors to pilot it. I'm very confident it'll work. And I think we can expand it dramatically from then because I don't think kids, whether they're a community college or four-year college, should be dealing with a small mortgage upon getting their graduation degree.
Steve Marchand, this is for you. What is your solution for the problem of gun violence in New Hampshire?
So back in February, I released a 7-point gun plan. And it's 7 points in part because it's complicated. It turns out there's at least 4 kinds of gun violence that we have to address in a meaningful way if we're going to get where I think we all want to go as a state, as a society. It's homicide, it's domestic violence, it's the threat of mass shooting, and then it's what 93% of gun deaths the last 2 years in New Hampshire have been, suicide. Suicide. There is somebody very close to me within the last year who made an attempt, and this became very personal. And I believe that there was a gun in that home. I don't believe it would have ended in an unsuccessful attempt. This has gotten very personal. And so I went to Lebanon because they were trying to go gun-free at their schools and found out that a 2003 law does not allow them to do so. That's one of my 7 points. And I gave my 7-point plan on the steps. About 20 people with guns, including AR-15s, showed up. But luckily, another 20 people were armed as well, and they had my back. They were armed with knowledge, they were armed with courage, and they had my back. And we gave the 7 points, 48-hour wait period, because the states that have a 48-hour wait period see 52% fewer gun suicides than the states that do not. Once you know that information, if you are not willing to haul you know what to get it done, I don't think you're going to be governor of New Hampshire. This is how we reduce so many gun deaths. But it's also a red flag law and universal background check and a bump stock ban and reinstating the concealed carry permitting process. It's the gun-free school zone. And I don't think AR-15s and similar weapons that are military grade, lightly modified for civilian purchase have anything to do with civilians holding them. We should ban those in the state of New Hampshire. When I do that, people with guns at my event say, I don't agree with all your points, but I agree with most of them, and I appreciate your courage and candor, and so I get their vote that way. We will get it not by being winceful, we will get it through strength.
Molly Kelly, your response.
Thank you, Skip. First, I want to say that I am so proud of the young people in the high schools who have stood up and are courageous. I commend them and I stand with them. You know, I mentioned earlier I have 4 children, and when they went to school, I never worried about them if they would be affected by gun violence. But now I have 7 grandchildren, and I worry about them every single day. So as governor, I am not going to wait till we have an incident here or a tragedy in this state. It is time to pass universal background checks in this state and to work regionally to make sure they're passed and transparent. We must keep guns out of the hands of children and domestic abusers, and we must keep military-style weapons off the streets of New Hampshire. And yes, you do need a permit to carry a concealed weapon. Thank you.
Question for Molly Kelly. Do you favor the legalization of recreational cannabis?
Yes, I do support the legalization, regulation, and taxation of marijuana. I do. Thank you. I was one of the first to really bring the issue of the opiate epidemic to the state. I served on the commission, the Alcohol and Drug Commission, and I was able to bring over $250,000 to my district early in this epidemic to start the first 24/7 hotline to make sure that people could raise their hand when they had a moment and be able to receive services. So what we need to do with the opiate epidemic, and I know people talk about it as, is this a pathway? No, to me, it's just the opposite. Just the opposite, because it is in the open. We know what is in marijuana. We regulate it, and we're more in control, not behind some backyard in a basement or something. What we need to deal with, what's most important today, is the opiate epidemic. It is affecting almost everyone, someone in everyone's family, and we have to do that in a comprehensive manner like we would any other medical epidemic. It would be comprehensive with prevention, treatment, and recovery. I would bring everyone to the table who's an expert, the recovery coaches. Those in recovery are experts in health and human services, addiction, and health care, and we will put a comprehensive plan together immediately. It is overdue, for sure. I never know how much time I have. 30 seconds. I just want to say that I had the opportunity to do a ride-along with the captain of fire on a fire truck, because they were going, actually, to a situation of an overdose. And it broke my heart. Broke my heart. They did save this young woman. She didn't want to be there. It's an illness. It's an illness like a medical illness, and we need to be able to help to do that. And we can, and it's a priority. So I did ask the captain how he felt about having brought someone back to life, and he said, Molly, this is my 5th time today. It's a crisis, it's an epidemic, and that's how we have to treat it. Thank you.
Steve, your response on that one.
Yes, 2 topics you got addressed there, good topics. First, those of you that followed my candidacy last time know my position on this. I favor the legalization, regulation, taxation of cannabis for adult use. I believe it serves at least 3 positive purposes. One is that I believe it actually will help, as Molly alluded to, reduce what the real gateway is to opiate addiction, misuse, overuse, and so forth, which is opiate use, prescribed opiate use. Most opiate use is for pain relief. It is palliative in nature, not curative. And that means that we can provide other forms of pain relief that do not have the same risk of addiction. And that's where cannabis can play a very powerful role. The second is it can actually lower cost for police and incarceration and judicial. And the third is, as I alluded to, it'll generate, I believe, about $35 million a year all in. Some people think the number's higher, but the free market has a funny way of working after a while. And we will literally be surrounded by legalization by the end of the year. And so when we're doing the calculation, we need to be cognizant of that when we're doing the policy. On opiates, and Molly mentioned that, I alluded to this earlier. Culturally, moving from a 28-day recovery period, because that's what the insurance company is willing to pay for in a law enforcement context, and moving to what is truly a lifetime of recovery. It is holistic in nature. And it is a medical situation. It is a healthcare situation. I spent a lot of time over the last 4 or 5 years talking to folks running or helping run recovery centers. And 2 things they mention. One is additional money, and I budget between about $6 and $8 million a year of sustainable state funding in order to get to what they tell me cumulatively they need. The other thing they need is predictability of funds. For what is the #1 priority in New Hampshire, it is stunning how much we ask recovery centers to use one-time revenue, philanthropy, grants, in order to do recurring expenses. And that's one reason why we don't have mental health professionals, because when you can't tell them how to pay for year 2, they cannot take the job. And so this needs to be not just more money, it needs to be predictable so they can budget for the long run.
Moderator's interjection. Chris Sununu is opposed to cannabis legalization because he thinks it would spur on the opioid crisis. It's exactly the opposite. As long as both are in the hands of the bad guys, we're going to have problems, and the offerings will be there. We need to get it out of the hands of the bad guys, make the money, which is the demand is there. We need to learn from prohibition and get this done. For Steve Marchand, this is an internet request sent in earlier. New Hampshire is one of the oldest states in the country. If our economy is to remain vibrant, we need to attract young people to our state. What's your plan to attract young people to New Hampshire? How do we keep young people from moving out of our state?
We've alluded to this between the two of us many times. It's embedded in many policy areas tonight. So we have two separate challenges. You sort of asked in that question. How do you keep the relatively young people you have, and how do you attract the relatively young people you do not currently have? Because we have a shrinking pool. If you look at every year younger in New Hampshire public schools, every year younger you go, it's smaller. Fewer 11th, then 12th, and so forth. So we are in the midst of about a 25 to 30-year trajectory. And again, the private sector understands this well. So in terms of an economic plan, it really comes down to four primary pillars. One is delivering America's best pre-K through 12 public outcomes. I can not overstate this. It is impossible to overstate. You can throw all the money you want at every tactic to try to draw people in or to keep people in a community. And it pales in comparison to the outcomes, the efficacy of outstanding local public education. It is the ultimate magnet that draws talent in and keeps it here. That's number one. And that's why pre-K, 6 states in America don't offer state funding of it. You got to drive to Mount Rushmore to get to the next closest one on the map. It's South Dakota. What message are we sending to young families in that? The debt-free plan I have for college is a powerful pitch and carrot to help keep young people in the state as well. The second element is infrastructure. It's bridges and it's roads. It's reliable drinking water. It's reliable internet, including in rural parts of the state. It's commuter rail. It continues down the line. Smart public investment communicates to the private sector. The people that are putting capital on the line, they want to know that we are thinking generationally as well. The third is addiction and recovery, which we just discussed. And the fourth is a culture of entrepreneurship. When I ask entrepreneurs what they see, and they say paid family medical leave, universal health care, a fiercely pro-immigrant agenda, and we go right down the line, a gun control policy that I described earlier, all the way down, by the end of it, often these self-described Republicans sound like progressive Democrats. That is what the culture of entrepreneurship looks like, and if we connect entrepreneurship and growth to progressive public policy, we will create the very environment entrepreneurs seek.
Molly Kelly, your response.
Well, I will tell you one thing that will not bring young people to our state or keep them here was recently our governor's veto of the voter suppression bill. As you know, that bill that he signed into law targets our college students. So if we say to college students and young people, we want you here, and then we say to them, but we really don't want to hear from you, we want to silence you, and we don't want your voice. That is not good for New Hampshire. It is wrong, and I would have vetoed that bill immediately. I will also say that I gave you a litany of things already that I felt would bring young people and keep young people here. I'm going to pick one that I think is most important to them and to all of us here, which is the Paid Family Medical Leave Act. If we can't pass the Paid Medical Family Leave Act and to be with the people we care about the most when they need us the most, who are we? When we talk about dignity and respect, that's what we're talking about. This happened to me personally with our daughter recently. We had a call, and we needed to go there immediately to see her. And what I thought about when I was there was her husband, how loving, kind, and her family was, and they gathered around her, and that's what healed her. And all I could think is if there was somebody that was not able to be with the person they cared about in that situation, because they were afraid they couldn't pay their mortgage or their rent or lose their job. It's unacceptable. It's not who we are, and it's a value. And we need to know, we need to let young people know those are our values, and that's who we are in New Hampshire. You have a right to vote, and you have a right to be with the people you care about. That's important to all of us. That's who we are in New Hampshire.
Molly, Kelly, this question is for you. This is the penultimate question. Given the recent Union Leader article on the lack of diversity in our state, how would...
It was despairing. It was racist. We are a welcoming state, and anybody and everybody can come to the state and are welcome. And we enrich each other, and it is unacceptable, and so was that article in the Union Leader. If we are talking about the same one, Skip, that I read today.
I'm sure we are.
Okay. So we need to open up our communities to each other and be welcoming. I keep going back to dignity and respect because it's one of my core values, and that's who we are. And I would work every day to make sure that everyone was welcome. As I said from the beginning, we want a state that works for everyone, not just a few. And I think I am not the only one here tonight who is committed to that. Thank you.
Steve, your response, please.
So in that culture of entrepreneurship that I described a moment ago, again, a word that Republicans and conservatives have owned for much of the last 40 years, it is our values. It is our turn to play offense and to own that word, that concept, entrepreneurship. But one of the values that is embedded in that is diversity. Diversity as a core strength. Diversity as a way that innovation occurs, that creativity occurs, that exposure to the ways around our state, our country, and our world, how that occurs. It is an enormous asset, and we need to communicate in the clearest terms possible. Not that just that we tolerate people from different backgrounds and cultures, but that we need them. We love them. They are an intrinsic part of an amazing place to be for the next 20 to 40 years. On the issue of immigration, when I gave my immigration plan a few weeks ago, I did it in front of a statue in Lafayette Park, about a block from where I was born in Manchester. It was a statue of a 19th century man by the name of Ferdinand Gagnon. Ferdinand Gagnon, some of you might know who he is, died very early, died in his 30s. He is seen in my community, the French-Canadian community, particularly in Manchester, as the person who spoke out about discrimination of arguably the dominant immigrant group of that time, French-Canadians. I gave my 4-point plan that includes being a sanctuary state that allows the kids of undocumented immigrants to be able to get in-state tuition, to be able to get a driver's license, to inform local law enforcement they do not need to comply with requests from ICE. That is something that they didn't have to do under Bush and Obama the way they're pressured to do under Trump. That is wrong, and we should tell them they do not have to do that. But if it is not for people like Ferdinand Gagnon, whatever their last name, whether it's Marchand or Martinez or Manchaput, it doesn't matter. It is the same story. It is an amazing story. It is America. And if we do not speak out forcefully and stand on the shoulders of those that did it before us, then shame on us. We are not the best we can be, and New Hampshire will not be the best it can be for the next 20 to 40 years.
Thank you. This is the last question. And this goes to Steve first. What is your stand on renewable energy, particularly solar?
I'd urge you all to go to my website on your way home, or, well, when you get home. Be safe. I want you to see it. I want you to see it fast, but not that fast. I'm very excited about it. It's a 5-point plan that can make us a leader on energy policy in the state of New Hampshire. You know, I spent a lot of time over the last several weeks trying to refine what I've felt for a long time to understand what other states are doing around the country. And the thing is, you don't have to drive that far. Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, we are 0.5% of our electricity comes from solar. Vermont is 10%, Massachusetts 8%. Paul LePage's Maine is ahead of us on these issues right now. And just as a side note, Us French Canadian executives are a lot more Trudeau and a lot less LePage. I just want to be clear about that. You got to clarify that in a moment like that. It's a 5-point plan. When I ask experts across the spectrum on it, what we need to do is use different levers to increase demand for renewable. All the tactics we talk about, including the 2 bills that Chris Sununu wrongly vetoed, are elements of getting to the end zone. They're all important. But it really starts with increasing demand for renewables, and that means the renewable portfolio standard, where we're trying to get to 25% by 2025. I think that we should join Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, and an increasing number of other states for a much more aggressive goal, which is attainable, 50% by 2030. And if we do that, we dramatically change the economy on this. It is waiting there. I favor offshore wind. We're talking about solar, biomass. I am dead set against Granite Bridge. Only candidate that's saying that because just like Northern Pass, those are projects that were bridges to the past. We have crossed those bridges. The bridge of the future of our economy and energy is renewable, it is conservation, and there are policies that we can look at and implement around the country if we are willing to lead that will make us a leader over the next 10 to 12 years on this policy.
Yes, thank you. I understand this is our last question, which means everything that you're thinking about you want to put into one question, one answer for the last question. But I will just say on the renewable energy, I hope you all heard me tonight about my commitment to renewable energy, not just talking about it, but getting it done by putting forth the first group net renewable bill that passed that has propelled solar and hydro in the state. I have put it on the table. I've been there. I've done it. And I will continue to move renewable energy further. I am disappointed, as I said, that our governor had vetoed that bill, and we find out that he had taken over $50,000 in corporate contributions. I am the only one running for governor in this race who has not taken $1 in corporate contributions in this campaign. So there are just two issues I want to mention real quick as we came up with immigration. What is the most important thing we need to think about in immigration today is that children have been taken away, ripped away from their parents, and they're not back together again, and we must stand up for that every single day. We know that our governor has received contributions from 2 of the private prisons that keep detainees there. It's unacceptable. I wrote him a letter and said, you need to stop that, and you need to send that money to any two nonprofit organizations who are helping to bring those children back. And I've also said that our governor should stand up to Donald Trump and say, you are not, your detainee, your deportation agencies are not welcome in this state. We are a welcoming state, and I would stand up to Donald Trump and say that. I also just want one thing more. Children are important to me. I said that at the beginning, children and family. I put legislation through I'm proud of, and we're moving forward because in this state, there are 44,000 children who are food insecure. They don't know where their food is. They're not sure where their food is coming from. When I'm governor, the first thing I will do is make sure every child in school is not hungry and has food in their stomach.
Each candidate will have closing remarks, and I want to thank everybody for your attention. Thank those who submitted questions, and I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of the questions. There were just too many, but we did have a wide variety and a good response amount of time for each candidate to answer. So with that, Steve Marchand, you're up for closing remarks.
And remind me of the length of the closing remark?
Pardon me?
How long are the
5
minutes? All right.
Oh, you want to get up? You want to get up?
Do you want me to
No,
go?
that's fine.
Sit here?
That's fine.
I'll sit here.
Okay.
There you go. We got comfortable, you know? I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Always enjoy being with you, Molly, and being with you here in Nashua. A quick story. So I'm 44 years old, and that means I was 8 months old when Richard Nixon resigned. And I would argue that that was the last time that this country was as messy politically, as chaotic politically as it is right now. It is uncanny in the history of this country how often, about every 40 years, there is a big messy moment like this. And we've been I don't know what, lucky is not always the right word, but somebody has eventually decided that that was the moment that they were going to define what it was going to mean to be an American, a Democrat, a Republican, and so forth for the next generation. In 1976, Gerald Ford was president, and Ronald Reagan challenged him from the right, and he almost beat Ford, but he didn't. And Ford gave the closing speech at the convention. And at the end of it, he realized that the energy in the room was not with him. It was with the insurgent coming from the outside, Reagan. So he said, Governor Reagan, you come down. You close out the convention. Close this thing down. And he did. And he said something that although what he did as president 4 years later, I suspect you join me in not agreeing with a heck of a lot of what happened the 8 years after that, he understood the magnitude of that messy moment. And he said this, I am in a room of Republicans, but I am not talking to you. I am talking to the Democrats and independents who are watching at home. They are searching for a cause around which they can rally and which I believe we can give them. And then he took a few minutes and he said what seemed counterintuitive to the people of the time, but that he understood was the way to build a majority that was durable and that was surprisingly crossing party lines by bringing people into the party for a generation, by seeing it could be their home for the next 20 to 40 years. He didn't say apologize. He didn't say moderate. He didn't say avoid specificity or blur differences. He said the following. He said, we have a banner of bold, unmistakable colors with no pale pastel shades. That's what he said. And he was right, unfortunately. 4 years after that, he won 44 states and then 49, and he set the tone for 40 years of conservative policies that have hurt us as a country in so many ways. Rising inequality, even the justice composition of the Supreme Court. We pay for it today. This is the next moment. And it always starts at the state level before it goes national. We have a responsibility at a moment like this to define the future, lest somebody else define it for us. At this moment, after hundreds of events and thousands of conversations with people with very diverse voting records, but who all show up because they are hungry to understand what the next generation of leadership will be, what it will mean to be a Democrat, to be a New Hampshireite, to be an American. That is our charge. And if we elect a governor in 2018 who has that vision to know where to go, the competence to know how to get there, the courage to say it out loud, energized and confident in what we can be, we won't just win an election. Oh, we will. And we'll get a majority in the House and a state Senate and executive council along the way. We will get to define what our state is going to be like for the next generation. I find that a terribly animating reason to be doing what I've been doing for the last almost 20 months. And talking to folks like you in towns and cities across the state, I know this animates you in unprecedented ways. I believe I am that candidate. I believe we are the party. And I know this is the moment. So that's what I offer. I appreciate you being here tonight. I ask for your support. And now let's go get it done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Molly Kelly, your closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Skip. Thank all of you for giving us the opportunity to talk about these important issues that are facing New Hampshire today. I hope that you can see that state leadership is more important today than ever. And I am proud of my Senate record, 10 years in the state Senate. I have always been there with public education, always supported public education. I have been a champion for women's rights, women's reproductive rights, and I stand and will stand with Planned Parenthood every single day. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I spoke up for common sense gun safety, and it is common sense gun safety. I stood up for common sense gun safety when it wasn't even popular to talk marriage equality in this state. And I also came then as they are now and what they will be. Being progressive, and governor makes really difficult decisions for the people that she serves. She must know who she is. She must know her core values. And she must know that those were her core values for her life. I have been tested. And I am ready to be that leader. because we know what we want if we work together. We want a New Hampshire that works for everyone and not just a few. I need your support, and I ask for your vote. Thank you all so very much.
We're going to have some closing remarks, and thank you all for coming. It's really wonderful to see so many people that want to participate and get informed about our values and our politics. This is a very critical election. I want to remind you that this was brought to you by the Nashua Democratic City Committee. Thank you to our executive board. Thank you to the committee members. And our website is www.nashuadems.org. That's nashuadems.org. And if you go on there, please hit the donate button so that we can do the work for you in getting our Democrats elected through Nashua and throughout the state. We have a program called DEM, D-E-M, Donate Every Month. Take the value of a cup of coffee, put it in there, and we'll all be much better off for it, and I thank you for that. Also, our next meeting, general meeting, is right here in this building at the theater on August the 6th. The executive committee will meet at 6. The general meeting is at 7. I invite you all to come and participate. Thank you very much to our wonderful candidates. Thanks once more to the Nashua Public Library, Carol and her crew. They are always so very cooperative and helpful. Thank you to Representative David Lyle for the audio visual. We are working hard on your behalf. Please check out the website, as I say. And while you're there, you can help by donating just a few dollars each month. 1 cup of coffee really will help. So please participate in that way and every other way. Get out to vote, get your friends and neighbors, and let's get this election to swing our way and turn this place blue. So with that, a very good night, and thank you for coming.